Well, I'm a little bit late addressing some of these items, and my name is Michael Crosby, and yeah, I'm a presidential candidate, but I want to address some of the SAG AFTRA material. I mean, SAG. We've just had some different strikes, big strikes, and I'm not a prominent person that people would remember. I mean, I've got my college time for film out of Cerritos, and I was on my experimental projects and having tragedy after tragedy, and I could never seem to get literally my projects completed. Chemical plants explode, they destroy the equipment. I lost, $500,000 in production equipment, and it's not an easy thing running a nonprofit to always come up with what you need to get your productions done. So I had another tragedy another time. We had about $70,000 worth of specialized costuming material where we're going to basically make a whole bunch of custom costuming for kind of a sword and sorcery thing item. And we ran into certain things where we just ran into a bit of luck, and it just didn't work out. And there's all these losses these different times, and there's these different reasons why, as part of the area of the archiving involving entertainment, basically didn't work out because we just couldn't get enough money in that area. And a lot of it started out because it was actually pertaining to legal evidence management. That's originally where it started, because a lot of it had to be legal evidence management, because we were dealing with certain types of lawsuits, and and then I had this college, and I always wanted to do certain things, so that experience was helpful, and I kept working with the other archive interests, which were very well-rounded and diverse, and again the archive keeps having really strange things happen to it. The COVID horrible hit, tremendous numbers of acts of violence, mind-boggling. Some people might remember some of that stuff. Basically, being mentioned fairly extensively off of X. A lot of the areas in the archive I had very special interest in, a lot of custom research. There was also material that was donated from other people. Many of these other people died, basically, and they donated a lot of their programming work and their tricks and their knowledge, and a lot of this was absorbed into the archive. And basically, aside from setting the current ongoing tragedy where I'm at, I was listening before people were saying that they were going to do a strike, and I laid some other stuff out during the strike, and I didn't get to really address it and more of a real podcast, real pod speech, and I wanted to. And I wanted to address more about AI, the future of AI, and how I felt that it was important for a serious partnership with the guilds, to basically work deals with certain companies, certain individuals, and make a partnership where ownership of certain styles of AI would become a community project involving multiple guilds, multiple people of talent, certain companies even, to be able to have a long-term goal of assuring an understanding of all of these symmetries pertaining to all of these genres and all of these types of individuals. I did a lot of extensive work in understanding human beings and their biological radio signals, and a lot of people don't understand there's like over 2 million biological radio signals in any given human being, and understanding the eventual mathematical computations to all of this and where it all goes into a really interesting area of science. And I had, just to admit it, I had extensive research from my lab regarding this. I had a lot of custom lab equipment that it just fell into my lap. I just ran into it, so to speak. So I had all these EEGs and computer-assisted black boxes and all this really neat stuff. And I just moved forward with, all kinds of stuff. And I had this idea. I wanted to work with a new idea for full cerebral interface. I wanted to come up with a series of detection methods that were as accurate as fMRI scanning equipment was, but basically have it in a freestanding environment where you could move around and basically be 20 feet away from the sensors. And oddly, I was very successful in coming up with some methods to do that, but everything was custom made, custom cards, custom pass-throughs, 3D, 4D computer setups. It was a lot of work. I used a lot of cards. It's a one-of-a-kind customization that I did to come up with a lot of this stuff. But the research is effectively massive, and I work with the mathematical computations to understand all of what I believe was the massive theoretical territories. And of course, my attorney would say, be careful at this point. There's limits to what you can say. There's a lot of serious patents and copyrights involved, and there actually are. But built into my research is an understanding that you can never abandon the natural quality and the natural pizzazz of human beings. Even though you can come up with computers and estimate everything, that you had to have a certain amount of respect for the original genetic sequence, and that there was an ownership that was inherently connected to this genetic symmetry. So a lot of this, I felt deeply about this in the work that I did, and I ended up getting on track with some other ideas, some other areas, and I wanted to look at a guild type situation where there would be a future of this technology, and definitely medical is into this technology. I'll tell you, it definitely expands way into medical. We're talking about biological, radio, quantum aperture type technologies at a human level, where you have a medical aspect, where you're looking at the various material at a medical aspect, and of course, this can become a huge medical understanding. Working with recording your various spiritual sets or mindsets, just your mindsets of whatever it is you're doing, having a full cerebral interface situation is something that I believe was definitely the future, and I believe that the format for the future of this technology had to be part of the standard at an intergalactic level. That what we were doing as today, even as fantastic as it might have been, was still a primitive technology, and that the full cerebral interface was the ultimate technology area. And so into this, I worked in all the mathematical possibilities, trying to come up with the total number of symmetries of what are plausible human beings. In other words, you can only radiographically go so far off the chart with the variances of human beings until you can no longer have a genetic biological structure that basically is functional, that would live. And there's a low, there's a high, there's a left, there's a right to this situation. And there's like, seemingly, it seemed like there was only like 156,000 actual face symmetries, actual base primary templates to human beings. And then it repeats. Then you have people that, hey, you look just like Joe or Maggie or whatever. And this is what my lab found when I went through a lot of this stuff. And I worked with very early facial recognition that would in 1998 and a bunch of different stuff, where I was looking at a much deeper series of signatures and trying to figure out very long ranges to use some of this as a form of specialized custom communication and security type stuff and enhancements. There was just so many aspects to the technology. It was incredible. But setting a lot of that aside, I also had a whole idea and series of what is right for human beings to be healthy. What are human beings entitled to? And then you have the Constitution. and the original constitutional values. And you have the system where, basically 1750, the average 12 to 14-year-old basically had carpentry as a standard skill set. You had to build your own roof over your head or you'd die. So basically, young people would build a structure in 2 to 6 months, the equivalent in board feet of a 2-bedroom house of today. So a longevity rate of basically 38 years for back then, unless of course you were a slave, it was much less. 1850, I believe the statistics available are 28 to 33 years of age, depending on the reason you live in that region. But today we're expected to retire at 65. We're expected to work basically 45 plus years. And that productivity ratio, I've done different pod speeches on this before, translates out into a modernization of the basic skill set, the basic carpentry skill set of about 480 homes, because you parlay at a certain point. So what people are entitled to, I have a completely different opinion as to what I believe is true productivity, a true mental, psychological healthiness, where people can believe in having a more solid future, believe in a plan where maybe they only want to work 5 years until they retire and that's it, or 5 years, I would say, until you can then really focus on what you want to do, which is really important if you're somebody that has an interest anywhere in the arts, anywhere in performance, anywhere in technology, that you would be able to then really dedicate yourself to any given area and not have to worry very much about certain economic situations. So effectively, a lot of my other AI research did things with my understanding of mass economic modeling systems. And I was coming up with series of math cogs that were so large, it was just going to be impossible to do them without literally building new chips. And we're talking about nobody would take me serious when I was trying to say, look, I want to do this, and I kind of sort of need $4 billion. And people were like, what? It was not an exciting thing, to move forward, in 2005, 4, 8, 2, to say that you needed a certain amount of money. I remember in 2000, 1990, I was thinking about doing different chips, and by 2000, I was actually really trying to find some chip technology that I could buy that was used and then modify it. I was going to make stuff the size of picnic tables, basically, and make these huge processors and stuff like that. I even thought about making some bigger, making some that would basically, you could get 2 of them in a 48-foot trailer, and slide them in there. And, but I just couldn't quite get it to pull off, But these huge math sets, all this digital data is saved on the math cogs, and what I believe the prompts in the future for how AI logic would have to work, and all of this tremendous work that went into these designs gave me incredible answers about knowing the future, about how many jobs are going to be lost from AI and basically, automation upgrading. And what a wonderful thing, because I know 10 years in advance. And I mentioned this in some of the other talks that I do. But also into this creative negotiating. If you get into creative negotiating, we get to that part where it's about creative negotiating. I saw a lot of different ideas where areas could be worked with at a completely different level. I found a whole lot of outside of the box ideas. And it was very exciting. It was very, very exciting. It's still exciting. I talk about some of them in my campaign. And to get into things such as combined loan leverage power for loans, where we have a non-discrimination policy, where you have things that are already being done with credit unions, where you have credit unions or, we're going to help you get the money from the Fed. We're going to get it wholesale. We've made our own bank, yada, yada. But beyond that, there are other options even beyond that. And that is the stability of loan, where you basically turn it into a developer's loan situation. So if you look at loan situations for housing developers, and you look at the type of loan situation and the complexities that are actually there, they're fairly complex, but you can simplify those. You could dramatically simplify those. So that's part of what I did. I've dramatically simplified them. I've got them down into code, turning them into blockchain, a lot of different things that way that that can be proposed. I posted a lot of stuff over a year and a half ago on X on some of the coding that was on the blockchain and design and the scope of some of the stuff. And there's a lot of other stuff. A lot of this was me reworking stuff that I had designed more than a decade ago. In some cases 2 decades ago. And basically, there are all these other creative options where we can set up completely different types of backtoes for better stabilization and better custom insurance situations. Situations that involve helping to empower people that if they're on gig situations or there's seasonal, if it's seasonal, how to work open times, availability times into construction so that you would make, ideally, hopefully, never less than $38 an hour. But certainly in some regions of the country that can vary. You can go down to 22, 28, pretty much 28 to 38. But the assets that you build when you utilize the construction factor of building your own home or your second home or your cabin or your combination home business, yada yada. So these type of items, that encompass a wide area of things. I mean, some people like aircraft, so you're gonna do, you can work with other people and maybe do a little, aero park thing, or you're gonna have a hangar for your personal aircraft, small aircraft and stuff. But so a lot of this works with very solid business concepts, where basically you do the construction. Construction standards are 70 cents on the dollar. The wholesale factor is 70 cents on the dollar of the retail value. And the government makes a lot of money. I talk about how that ratio between the 70 to the 100% has a 30%, and that's what the government prints. That's how the government get their money. It goes all the way back to our forefathers. I talk about that and many other different talks. But the cross stability of creative loan backtoe situations has all kinds of room in it for new types of creative deals and different ways to look at what is solid, what is solidity, what are people worth, what is your labor worth, making your labor 100% bankable at all times, and making the total stretch of your 45 estimated years of work available to an understanding where it's bankable and it's usable, and so long as you use it as a hard new asset development item, it completely puts everything in a different territory. You have a whole different type of solidity. And again, it gives people the option to have the pick to be able to control how the labor is done, because each person is technically their own developer, yet you have collective contract partnerships. You have the guild, members of the guild. So this is far more of an extension. It is way more intricate, basically, than doing something where it's just a credit union, And we have additional options that can be very practical as well. Now, if I'm going to talk about some of the additional extensions, the company, like I'm building Crypteworld, and it's got game components, all this other stuff, 3D, all these different areas, a lot of stuff based on other tech, other research. Cutting it off there, I'll go into more at another time. But basically, having an option built in where you say that you're going to do business with multiple contractors, multiple companies. You can, if we focus on a primary company, we can say, what about the primary company is going to collectively agree to the assemblage of the participants for a particular contract, film, project, whatever, or even more expanded, even on a more expanded, generalized basis. Percentages, items can be discussed. But basically where they're saying, okay, will help guarantee the loan. In other words, we will help guarantee a wholesale loan from another source and be the guarantor for new hard asset construction. Now, this helps some people get into various types of structures. Now, I'm not saying let's build Taj Mahal or everyone's going to go build a castle. That's not what the plan's about. However, the plan is about a multi-home structured situation, and every time we find a new different source, we have a brand new outside of the box option that can be on the table for consideration to say, well, how about we do something that's going to cost you way less, and how about we make a deal? We can even discuss a deal of whether or not the guarantourism factor, that's being the teeny tiny slice line hair of being the guarantor on a collective rotary of the project, all the people in the project, on a new hard asset construction deal. They can even become partners. This can be a multi-option deal. It can be a repetitive deal. An agreement to say that if it's a new hard asset construction, that primarily that yes, we can do a deal where we'll help guarantee the loan. This changes the whole status. This doesn't mean that the company itself has to take money out of their pocket to do this. This means we have another source. We can resource through the Fed, which means that if we're working with credit union options, which is basically like a bank, then we can work and talk about getting near to wholesale loan access for new hard construction and make it available for each of the members. And if you're in seasonal and you're gigging, you're going to be able to say, yeah, I got free time, do construction, boom, 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 because it is a new hard asset concept generation. So we have solidity here. We really do. So this brings new options to help financially stabilize people's future by adding hard assets into the scope. And there's a lot of ways it can go with this. So this is something I'm putting right out on the table. I'm doing this as a national campaign with my presidential campaign on a large scale. But right now it works for guilds and for unions to adopt right now and work with industry. This can be a very harmonious set of negotiations that can add a completely new facet. Now, perhaps we can't necessarily have situations where everybody has everything immediately agreed to, but this is an item that is major. Yet the cost overall, we're talking about guarantor insurance on the labor of the collective labor of members. So, and the management of additional assistive labor and whatnot. So this is actually a teeny tiny commitment, respectively, to industries of various levels around the board. So there's a lot of creative ways that can look at this. This could really fly, and it can make a big difference, especially in the long term of people's lives. So this is something I'm putting right on the table and saying, hey, there's a whole bunch of other areas that people haven't thought about at the same way, on the same level. And there's a lot more options open. And that's something that I was putting into Crypteworld in designing what kind of extra special features would be part of employees or employees/partner projects. Because there's a lot of things that I thought of that really didn't cost hardly anything at all to add into incredible features and extensions. Okay, that's, I don't want to say that there's a lot more, except I do have to catch up on about 5 calls, it looks like right now. So I'm going to have to let things go and run this, and as I get time, I'm going to pump this out and post it up onto X. Again, Michael Crosby, formerly my front-end now, I'm running for president. Yes, I'm running for POTUS. And basically, I have the best AI plan ever assembled. I did a bunch of modeling on it. Nobody comes close. I have the world's best economic plan engineered, and nobody seems to believe me. It's mind-boggling. And for some reason, I have people shooting at me. That's not fun. And tremendous violence has been focused at me. Thousands and thousands of acts. I've lost 18 mobile broadcast RV archive vehicles since the beginning of COVID, basically. And there is a lot of bad players that are in dereliction of duty and have participated in some nasty blacklisting and whatnot. So I hope people don't get turned off and rubbed the wrong way. You know, I believe in a fairness, and quite frankly, I'm a capitalist. I look at myself as a capitalist, and I really don't like other different people that think too small. I actually think that other candidates think too small, and I think sometimes businesses think too small, and they're not being wise enough to understand that human beings all have bankable labor, that everybody's labor is bankable, and this is worth a whole lot, and there's no reason for idle time. Not if you want to work, not if you want to work, you know. So I invite you to look at some of the various scenarios that I put out here and there, and I look forward to shaking hands with some of y'all one of these days. Thank you.